Communism, once ruled the roost in many parts of the world, was the main ideology of the USSR, making USSR a major world power, still has a big influence in the world thanks to China. It was so strong that it once propped up the Indira Gandhi government, and the communists were so crucial to the survival of the Indira Gandhi government that she handed over the prestigious education ministry to a lifelong communist who proceeded to do with Indian education what the United States did to Hiroshima in World War II.
You maniacs! You blew it up! Damn you!
In fact, the communists once governed Kerala and Tripura for over 25 years and West Bengal for a staggering 34 years. Now, I use the word govern with a high degree of sarcasm. Just like saying getting a gold medal from the Kap Panchayat is totally as legitimate as an Olympic medal. But from once being this powerful, at least politically, they've now been reduced to almost nothing in India. Once the kingmakers during Indira Gandhi's tenure, the political outfit that won 43 seats in the 2004 Lok Sabha is today struggling to survive. As of the 2019 Lok Sabha election, the communist parties like CPI and CPIM managed to secure a grand total of 5 seats combined.
To Tripura now, where a day after the BJP created an electoral history by clinching power from the 25-year-old left regime, the four-time Tripura Chief Minister Manik Sarkar tendered his resignation to Tripura Governor Tathagat Roy. The governor has asked him to continue till the new government is sworn in.
As far as Tripura is concerned, the ruling BJP has taken a lead over the Left-Congress alliance, not quite working out as far as this alliance of the left and the CPM is concerned. The BJP, though...
So what happened? What caused the communists to shrink faster than Pakistan's economy? Well, let's find out. But before understanding the decline of communism in India, we must first look at the rise of it. The roots of communism in India can be traced back to the early 20th century, during a time when the country was grappling with British colonial rule. Many Indian revolutionaries who wanted to overthrow the British government were looking for ways to fight against its oppression and exploitation, and they found inspiration in radical ideas like communism. They were particularly inspired by the Russian Revolution of 1917. The Russian Revolution was a historic event in Russia when the Bolshevik Party, led by Vladimir Lenin, took control of the Russian government and overthrew the Tsar, or the Russian king, or the Russian royalty. Lenin was very successful in presenting himself as a representative of the people and their will, and presenting the Tsar as the out-of-touch elite who hoarded all the wealth, didn't care for the common people, and conducted unnecessary wars while the common folk toiled and starved. And upon gaining access over the government, the Bolsheviks promised to end the war, give land back to the peasants, and provide plenty of food, which made them very popular among the tired soldiers, workers, and farmers. The success of this revolution inspired many Indian revolutionaries, especially how the collective and organized efforts of the common people could overthrow a colonial regime. And so eventually the Communist Party of India to create a similar revolution against the British rule.
The party has played a significant role in Indian politics, particularly during the country's struggle for independence from British colonial rule.
Key figures like M.N. Roy were instrumental in forming the party.
The Communist Party of India was founded in Kanpur in 1925 as a result of the split within the Indian National Congress. The party's first leader was M.N. Roy, who was inspired by the Russian Revolution and believed in the power of communism to bring about social change.
Other important leaders were S.A. Dange and Muzaffar Ahmad, who were among the pioneers who helped establish communist ideas in India. M.N. Roy was one of the first Indians to engage with Marxist ideology after his involvement with the Communist International, or the Comintern. S.A. Dange started raising communist awareness through his writings, particularly with his booklet Gandhi vs. Lenin, which contrasted the ideologies of Gandhi and Lenin. The Communist Party of India was officially founded in Kanpur in 1925. It served as a platform for coordinating communist activities and spreading the ideas of Marxism across India. The CPI was instrumental in organizing trade union and labor strikes. They mobilized workers in industries such as jute, textiles, and railways to fight for better wages, better working condition, and workers' rights. The All India Trade Union Congress, which was founded before the CPI, became closely associated with the party. The CPI used the AITUC as a platform to raise issues related to labor exploitation under the British rule. CPI led major strikes like the Bombay Textile Strike of 1928. The party envisioned a socialist state that would focus on common ownership of resources and fair distribution of wealth. From the very beginning, the CPI faced harsh repression from British authorities.
The party's early years were marked by internal struggles and external opposition from the British colonial authorities. Many of its leaders were arrested and imprisoned, and the party was forced to operate underground.
Notable conspiracy trials such as the Peshawar conspiracy cases and the Meerut conspiracy cases were designed to crush communist activities. But the result of these harsh cases was basically the Streisand effect, which means the more you try to divert attention away from something, the more attention is diverted towards it. So instead of actually crushing communist activities and diverting attention away from it, these trials actually brought communism into public discourse, raising awareness about its ideas among ordinary people. The Communist Party of India attracted various revolutionary groups, including Ghadar fighters and anti-imperialist members of the Indian National Congress. Also during this time, the concept of Indian freedom evolved from a vague idea of dominion status to a more concrete vision of Swaraj and freedom from both colonial rule and socio-economic exploitation. And now we need to talk about post-independence India, where the role of the Communist Party really starts to change and gets slowly more and more insidious. After India gained independence, the CPI continued to show itself as a champion of land reforms, workers' rights, and nationalization of industries. It opposed the pro-capitalist policies of the Congress Party and talked more about the fair redistribution of wealth. The CPI also played a key role in leading struggles for the formation of linguistic states, particularly in the Telangana rebellion from 1946 to 51, where the CPI-led peasants fought against feudal landlords and the Nizam's rule. After independence, the Communist Party faced a new struggle. Should they engage with the new Indian government, or should they continue fighting against it just like they were fighting against the British colonial government? And eventually, because of this struggle, the CPI split into factions in 1964, leading to the formation of the Communist Party of India, Marxist or CPIM, which opposed working with the Indian National Congress, the governing party of the day. The CPI, the Communist Party of India, supported a broad-based coalition with various political entities, often prioritizing national interest over strict communist principles. The CPIM, though, focuses on a class-based approach, often critical of alliances with the Congress Party, which they saw as the bourgeois elite, advocating for a more radical transformation of society. The CPIM emphasizes the comprador character of the Indian bourgeoisie, or meaning, according to them, all Indian power structures, governmental, societal, legal structures are evil, incapable of change, incapable of leading anti-imperialist and anti-feudal struggles, which means that an overthrow of the current Indian system and a radical transformation like what Fidel Castro did in Cuba, where thousands of political opponents were murdered, or the Cultural Revolution in China, where tens of millions were murdered, is the only way forward, allegedly according to the CPIM. And it will not surprise you that this extremist faction is the one that had all the political success in India. In 1977, they won the elections in West Bengal and began a 34-year reign of terror. They were also part of the ruling LDF alliance in Kerala and the Secular Progressive Alliance in Tamil Nadu. Now, it's important to acknowledge that there were genuine inequalities in Indian society and discrimination that the communists were able to identify, but then supercharge and utilize for their own political ends. In fact, their political power was so strong at a point that in 1996, the CPIM was offered the post of Prime Minister for Jyoti Basu during the formation of the United Front government. But the party declined, marking what many considered a missed opportunity. And from there, the decline started. In 2008, the CPIM withdrew its support for the UPA government over the Indo-US nuclear deal, a decision that weakened its in the 2009 general elections. The CPIM saw a significant decline in its seats in the Lok Sabha. In 2011, it suffered a historic defeat in West Bengal, losing power after 34 years of continuous rule.
Even as Friday morning's vote tallies began to confirm the Trinamool Congress's rout of West Bengal's communist-led government, crowds began to throng the residence of party leader Mamata Banerjee.
To 2019, where they got just a grand total of 3 seats. So what happened? How did communism have such a precipitous fall in India? Well, I'm sure you've often heard the opinion that in theory, communism is a great idea. It just so happens that every time it is implemented, something went wrong. It's like saying that driving 200 miles an hour on the highway, high on cocaine, alcohol, and boner pills sounds like so much fun. But I don't know why the police officer was mad at me. Because it's not just about the implementation. It's probable that the idea itself might have some major flaws. Because at first glance, you'd think that India would be a perfect place for communism to thrive. It's a huge population with a large amount of poverty, large amounts of inequalities, there's a massive gap between the rich and the poor, and clearly in some areas of the country, communist ideology did find a lot of social and political success, but not all across the country, and now it's in severe decline. So what happened? Well, in my opinion, communism is fundamentally at odds with the natural state of India, because the problem with communism is that it inevitably leads to authoritarianism. See, communism hates Abrahamic religion. It eschews all religion, in fact, but for all intents and purposes, it is itself an Abrahamic religion. The purges that were conducted by the Catholic Church in Europe and by Islam in Western Asia and in India mirrors the purges by Stalin in the Soviet Union or by Mao in the Cultural Revolution in China. Much like Abrahamic religions have a concept of original sin, communism also has a concept of original sin, which is being a bourgeois bourgeoisie class oppressor. Much like Abrahamic religions divide the world into good and evil, communism does the same thing. It divides the world into the good proletariat versus the evil bourgeoisie, which can never be reformed and has to be overthrown. But what they don't recognize is the world isn't so clearly black and white. There can be many reasons for discrimination or inequalities in society. Religion, language, aptitude. Hell, many people who belong to the same class often oppress each other due to silly reasons. People think that caste-based discrimination in India is an upper caste versus lower caste issue. However, that is very far from the truth. In fact, many scheduled caste communities, despite being in the same social stature and in the same economic or class background, viciously discriminate against each other. Similarly, much like the Abrahamic religions like Christianity or Islam, which literally means submission, communism also believes in conquest and forced compliance. The Communist Manifesto openly suggests that their goal is the overthrow of the bourgeois supremacy and the conquest of political power by the proletariat. Communists do not believe in democracy. They see democracy only as a means to their conquest, which is why democracy almost always collapses when the communists come to power, as we have seen in India with the example of the horrible political violence in Bengal. The goal is what will later be called by communists the dictatorship of the proletariat. Dictatorship is the key word here. This simply doesn't jive with how Indians are inherently. See, Indians are inherently democratic because India's native culture makes Indians naturally open-minded and respectful of other ways of thinking, which is why India literally has millions of forms of gods and goddesses. Which is why, despite there being strong disagreements between various native cultural ideologies, we have never seen warfare or genocide on the level of the Crusades or the communist genocides. This forced monoculture is at odds with Indians' natural state and will be eventually projectile vomited out like alcohol after a long night of partying. Communism has often led to repression and violence. The modern economy and the Indian of today is just not interested in that. The modern economy is driven by innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship, things that require freedom, creativity, and individual enterprise. And it's very clear to see that the modern Indian has made their choice. The number of startups in India has increased from just 450 in 2016 to over 90,000 in 2023, making it the third largest startup ecosystem globally. As of September 2024, India is home to 111 unicorn startups with a total valuation of $350 billion. This represents a significant growth, as India had only been adding approximately one unicorn per year until 2016-2017. Since then, the number has increased exponentially, with a 66% year-on-year growth in new unicorns being added annually. While unicorns used to emerge mainly in sectors like e-commerce, fintech, and software services, they're also now emerging in unconventional sectors like content and gaming, hospitality, data management and analytics, health tech, social commerce. India is ranked 4th out of 51 countries in terms of quality of its entrepreneurial system, according to the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor and National Entrepreneurship Context Index. The startup landscape is projected to generate over 1.25 million direct employment opportunities by 2025. Communism, with its obsession with state control of everything, stifles these qualities that Indians are looking for. It is an ideology that relies on the idea that if someone is poor, it is only because someone rich is oppressing them. Communism needs to survive off of conflict and the idea of revolution, because if there is no conflict, why do you need communism? When there isn't a conflict, communism needs to create one. It's like Kangana Ranaut and her Twitter account. Just chill out for a couple of days, Kangana. Why do you have to wake up and choose violence every day? Again, because of communism's desperate need for conflict. It wouldn't surprise you that the communist ideology was prominent behind the Naxal insurgency, which started in 1967, born out of communist ideology. The movement's founders, Charu Majumdar and Kanu Sanyal, were heavily inspired by Mao's revolution in China. They believed that an armed uprising and the violent overthrow of the democratically elected Indian state was the only way to reform society and replace it with a communist society. In fact, Sanyal believes in the philosophy that political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. They urged a protracted people's war to overthrow the Indian state, which is essentially a never-ending guerrilla war against the democratically elected government. Again, a never-ending conflict. That's the communist wet dream. Next, the Naxal insurgency became one of the worst insurgencies in India, where not only hundreds of security personnel were killed, but politicians were targeted. And remember, particularly when it comes to Indian communism, it's not about the people, it's about the ideology, it's about control, and it's about the unending revolution. Which is why when innocent civilians don't agree with this ideology, they become fair game as well. Which is why Naxals killed 27 villagers once, accusing them of being police informers, the same people that they were pretending to uplift uplift and help. From 2000 to 2022, over 12,000 people lost their lives in Naxal violence, and a large percentage of them were innocent civilians. And in the goal of their endless revolution, communist-backed political violence has spread across the country, turning into a tool for power and control. During the CPIM rule in different parts of India, political clashes became disturbingly common. In 2007, the Nandigram incident saw communist cadres violently attacking villagers who were protesting land acquisition. This left at least 14 people dead and hundreds injured.
March 14, 2007, the CPIM-led government of the poor and the peasants tried to forcefully acquire 10,000 acres of agricultural land for a foreign company in Nandigram. The farmers, having formed a Bhumi Raksha committee, resisted the snatchings of their lands. They were first attacked by CPIM's Harmad Bahini, who threatened and set fire to the villagers' huts and prepared the ground that led to firing.
One of the most shocking and lesser-known events is the Mari Jhapi massacre of 1979. This atrocity unfolded under the rule of communist Jyoti Basu in West Bengal, when the communist police and cadres murdered nearly 1,700 Bengali Hindu refugees, most of them scheduled caste, many of them women, children and the elderly, who had fled from religious persecution in Bangladesh. This extended further with the 1988 Mandai massacre, which left over 350 people dead, fueled by violent communist forces that had gripped power in the region. Even more disturbing is how many left-leaning intellectuals and academics openly supported this violent insurgency and ideology. People like Professor G.N. Sai Baba and Varavara Rao were examples of individuals allegedly linked to Naxals, providing an ideological cover for their atrocities. Professor G.N. Sai Baba was convicted in 2017 for his links to Maoists. Varavara Rao was also arrested for his involvement in the Bhima Koregaon riots in 2018. And right now I want to make one more interesting point, which is a big difference actually between Chinese communists and Indian communists. See, fundamentally, communists in India were anti-India, anti-Hindu, whereas the Chinese and Russian communists were and are pro-China and pro-Russia. They're hardcore nationalists. In fact, the Indian communists' repeated actions have shown how they are against India and her culture. This disconnection was most evident during the 1962 India-China war. While India was fighting for its life to protect its borders against Chinese aggression, when hundreds of Indian soldiers were dying at the border, some communist factions openly supported China, arguing that the conflict was a result of India's expansionist policies. In fact, the party issued instructions to its members to not donate blood to Indian soldiers. After the war, the left front in West Bengal even went so far as to plaster posters across the state with the slogan, "China's chairman is our chairman." The communist parties in India often maintained strong ties with foreign powers, whether it was Moscow or Beijing. Reports from the Mitrokhin archives and declassified CIA documents reveal that both CPI and CPIM were allegedly funded by the USSR and China during the Cold War. These parties received money through kickback schemes, business transactions, and even direct cash payments. This obviously doesn't sit well with a lot of Indians, especially when the country was trying to assert its own identity and break free from foreign influence. They've also been seen as hypocritical while being openly anti-Hindu. Because while being openly anti-Hindu, they very happily celebrate Iftar and Eid. The communists disrupted Ganpati celebrations in Andhra Pradesh at a school, but supported Iftar celebrations at that very same school. While China demolishes mosques, bans Islamic clothing, and throws Muslims into re-education camps, Indian counterparts spend their time attending lavish Iftar parties while attacking India's Hindu culture. In fact, I'm sure you've heard that communists tend to be hardcore atheists. They hate religion. But Indian communists are a different breed. The West Bengal communist stalwart Abdul Razak Mullah not just went to the Hajj pilgrimage, but also openly proclaimed that his devotion to the faith he was born into and Allah is always 100%. I mean, watching all this stuff, Lenin, Stalin and Mao must be turning in their graves so hard that you could attach a turbine to them and power an entire village. But what the communists don't realize is that India does not hate its religion. India does not hate its culture. India is very deeply connected to its religion and its culture, which is again an ironic thing for Indian communists to do, because Chinese communists clearly tap into Chinese culture, Chinese heritage to generate national pride and to increase their acceptability. The communists have also been criticized for their position on Kashmir. According to them, Kashmir should be offered autonomy and freedom, which obviously Indians perceive as undermining India's national integrity. Again, something that you just cannot imagine any Chinese communist saying about any part of China. And the last major factor why communism failed was simple: lack of results. Even though they were able to manage success in states like West Bengal and Kerala and rule over those places with an iron fist for a very long time, they simply didn't deliver on their promise. West Bengal didn't become some socialist paradise. In fact, the West Bengal economy fell apart, which was once one of the most industrialized and prosperous states of India. Industries left West Bengal faster than Akshay Kumar shoots a movie. Bengal's traditional industries like jute and tea started declining significantly. Many intellectuals and entrepreneurs left Bengal and settled abroad or went to other states, especially Gujarat and Maharashtra. As a result, West Bengal became economically stagnant for a very long period of time. In 1977, West Bengal was at the second position after Maharashtra in terms of employment and value added. By the 1980s, Maharashtra was still number one, but West Bengal had already fallen a bunch of points. See, understanding today's Indians is simple. The new generation that has been shaped by the economic reforms of 1991 now wants prosperity. They don't mind consumerism. Contrary to Marxist ideals, today's youth seek global opportunities, eager to travel for work and embrace the perks of a modern mobile lifestyle. They also take pride in their culture, which Indian communists for some reason abhor. Without adapting, communists face an uphill battle to remain relevant. See, Indians are fundamentally a positive people. Despite poverty and inequality, Indians have shown faith in their democracy. They believe in removing corrupt leaders through election and not through an endless revolution. But I do want to acknowledge something, that communism, even though it's a deeply flawed ideology, does highlight some important problems that purely free market economies may miss. That in the blind pursuit of wealth, some groups may get left behind. Some groups may end up with all the wealth, which might lead to massive inequalities, which will lead to resentment and anger, which can lead to violence and social collapse. We should probably aim to find a good balance between the good points of free market capitalism and communism, which is where social democracy comes in, something that has been espoused by both the Congress Party and the BJP in India. Social democracy is a political ideology and system that combines the elements of capitalism and socialism within a democratic framework. It supports the market economy and entrepreneurship, but also aims to achieve social justice, economic equality, and individual freedom through government intervention and fair regulation of the market economy. It aims to provide welfare benefits to citizens like universal healthcare, free or subsidized education, social security and unemployment benefits, affordable housing initiatives, and you can see that in the current government. One can argue that the BJP government under Modi is already a social democracy. Modi has spoken often about promoting free market economics and entrepreneurship while also taking concrete steps to bring more and more people out of poverty and into the financial and social mainstream of the country through targeted welfare programs like the Jam Trinity, Skill Up, Mudra, Ujjwala, Swachh Bharat, Har Ghar Jal Yojana, and through massive infrastructure programs. And I feel like for a country like India, particularly for a growing country like India, this is a much better system than the pure communist system, which is why communism, in my opinion, failed in India. And what do you think? Why do you think communism today is struggling so badly in India? I'm very interested to know your comments, so let me know in the comment section down below. Other than that, I will see you for the next one. Until then, stay healthy, stay happy. I'll see you next week, and to all of you, a secular pranam.